Okay, everybody, welcome to Painting for Pleasure. I'm your host, Tony Visco, and we're going to do this little beach shack sitting on the dunes. Well, let's get some sky in first of all. So I pre-wet the paper. Actually, you can tell by the buckle here. I actually wet it on the back and the front because I was hoping that it would lay down a little bit better than this. Still a little bit on the wet side, and I'm going to run into a problem with all this sort of modeling here, but it's Fabiano. It's 140 pound but it acts like about 90 pound. So what I want to do first of all is get some of this nice sky in here, and let's see, then we'll go from there. I got something that's hanging here, and I don't want that to be in my painting, so hold on, let me just pull this out of the way. Okay, that should do it. Here's the drawing. Here's actually what I sent you. Well, I'm sorry about that, but this is what we're working from. And we're going to do a nice blue sky using the wet of the paper. The pigment that I'm working with right now is the consistency of milk. Tea or milk, something like that. All right, we're going to come right down into this area here. This is all going to be sky, and we're going to get some of the nice sky behind these trees that are in here. And I'm going to end up putting some sky in. Let me get a smaller brush here. We're going to put some of that sky in the windowed areas. Back in here, pick that sky up. And we'll end up doing some little sand, a little bit of sand back there too. We're seeing between. Out another window is what we're doing. We're going to go out another window here. So I'm just sort of toning this in a little bit. Okay, and everything else is going to be dark. So the best way to do skies, as we talked about in the past, is just to let it go. It's going to be lighter down here, darker up in the top. If I actually use a little bit more pigment up on the top, now my pigment is, my brush is damp. As the brush, my brush is damp, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a heavier amount of sky and let that all just blend together. So it'll be lighter at the bottom and darker at the top. Now generally what I like to do is I like to move from one color to another. So if I add a little bit of my opera rose to my blue, and I use cobalt blue if you remember. If I come over in this direction here, we'll just make this a little bit more interesting, and then it'll be a little bit darker coming in here, so it'll be a little bit lighter on this side. Sky, leave it alone. Number one. So we're seeing some sky in here in the background. I put that in pretty solid because this was it was not wet. I didn't wet anything in the house. Wet all the way around it, but I didn't wet anything in the shack. So I'm just adding a little bit of water to this just to give it a little bit of character. Okay, so the next stage of the game here is we have sand dunes over here, and we have sand dunes that are closer, that is sandier, and then what we have is we have some grassy dunes that are over in this area. Those grassy dunes are going to end up being a little bit on the green side. So I'm taking the same blue that I just worked with, and I'm going to add a little bit of my yellow ochre to it, and I'm actually going to get that blue is going to go on the gray side because I've already got a little bit of red in it. You see what I just did here? This is all sort of a grayish color, and it's ideal for stuff that's going to go on in here. And I'm going to end up just doing this and let that feather up a bit. That's just going to give me some tonal value back there. And because all of this is going to be filled on this side, this is going to be all grass. We're going to put some gray back there as well. Again, this is still wet. Going to add a little bit of cerulean blue to this gray area back here, and I'm going to add a little bit of cerulean blue, and I'll bring this over under the camera so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm taking some cerulean blue and mixing it right in there, and then I'm going to come over here and pick up some of my Naples yellow, which is a cool yellow, and it sort of, what it does is it grays down a bit, flattens it, I guess, not as bright, not as vibrant. But we're going to come in here and we're going to sort of add a little bit of that, a little bit darker in the foreground kind of thing. And I'm going to hit the top of this a little bit more and let that go. Going to do the same thing with a little bit of yellow ochre, just a little bit of yellow ochre. And I'm going to come in here with a little bit of yellow ochre, just to give it a little bit of a change up, and maybe hit a couple of spots on this side. So all of that's going to sort of mix together. There's going to be a blending that's going to happen throughout here. Now I've actually gone over my tree trunks and my tree branches, because those are all going to be darker in this area. And my sand dunes are going to be all lighter, so I'm leaving this white right now. And this is pretty wet, so we're going to end up letting it go, letting it dry out a little bit more. And then we're going to continue to work a little bit on this. While this is drying, we need to get a little bit of tonal value into this area over here, and we have a cable reel that's over here. It's right here. And we have a tree that's going to be in here as well. And take some of this heavy water out of here with my tissue. And what's going to happen is it's just going to create a little bit of water, less water, maybe make it a little bit more cloud bank or whatever. And again, a little bit of something up here. And you know what? While I'm doing that, I'll just give it a little bit of a wisp of some sort of clouds in the background here. All right, a little bit of a light shade. give it an indication of maybe some clouds back there. So we have a couple of things going on here. We got that into place. We need to deal with our building and our foreground. I want to do the foreground last. So I want to do the building first. And the building is going to be a little bit of a tonal value of some interesting grays and blues and so forth. I mean, it's a beat up old shack. So we have to look at that, and I also have to work around it because I've got some lobster traps in here, some of these lobster buoys in here. Some of them are going to be white light areas, and we have some rocks that are in here and debris, general debris that we can't identify. We're not going to try to identify it. We're just going to put it in as debris, so there'll be just dark spots and light spots. And so what we want to do is, I'm going to leave this dry up in the top here. I'm going to start to wet into certain areas over here. And we're going to start to sort of fill this in a little bit. So I'm going to end up doing some dark trees in this area here. I'm going to end up doing a lighter roof, and some of this will be mid-value to dark value. Some grays, some blues, and just going to start to put it in. So here's what we're going to do. This is dry right now. So what I'm going to do is come in here with a brush, wet some of this area, and we're going to make some light grays, and that's going to be basically cobalt blue, burnt sienna, and where that's a little bit wet, it's going to soften out. Dry area, wet area. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is I'm going to come in here and we have a wet area, and we're going to do some wet areas and dry areas, okay? With these grays. And we're just going to let it sort of start at the top. It's going to be a little bit darker under here. Little dry area. Bring some water in this area here. Around that buoy. And we'll make that white. Around some of this area here. I want a variation in this shack in terms of my grays. And some of it's going to be browner, so I'm going to end up using more burnt sienna in my mixture here. And this is dry down here, and I'm going to come into the wet area. All right, so we're going to end up doing around those rocks. I'm going to come up, and we're going to do it a little bit down there, and then we're going to end up doing the same thing, add a little bit more blue to get into that gray that we want. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm sort of working my way around my rocks, lobster buoys, sorry. Leave some of it light, some of it white. Add a little bit of some burnt sienna in some of these areas, like maybe here. A little bit of dark stuff up in that area. the variety is what I'm looking to do here. The variation in terms of my values is going to be sort of critical. Okay. So it'll give me some lights and some darks, and I can go work that out. Now I got, as I said, I put some pigment in some dry areas and some wet areas, and this is all sort of melding together, blending together. And I'm going to end up on the top, it's going to be very, very light. And we're going to end up doing almost a shell gray, pinkish roof structure here. And this is all dry, so let's start with just light areas, okay? A little bit of on the pink side. For my roofing shingles, and then a little bit of the gray. All right, we'll let that dry. I'm going to put a real dark piece in there. So I got the top of my building over here, and the bottom of the building that's over there. And we're going to paint some real darks between my window panes, but I'll do that dry. And we need to actually come in here. We have shadow coming down in here as well. But before I do the shadow, I want to actually do all of the other stuff in here. So it's probably difficult to see because this thing is buckling like a son of a gun. Unfortunately, that's what's happening with this type of paper. When you do a lot of wet into wet on this particular paper here. Okay. We're going to let that set. Want that to dry out pretty good. And then we're going to start to fill in a little bit more in terms of my tree trunks and trees and background. My rocks. If we were going to do those. So before I even do that, I think I'm going to start to put in, because that's all going to be dark. And what I want to do is create the sand, the sandiness of what's going on here. So my sandy area is going to be made up. My sandy area is going to be made up of probably my Naples yellow and a little bit of my alizarin crimson for the darker sandy areas, and maybe for the lighter sandy areas a little bit of my opera rose. So the critical part here is, I mean, I want the sandy area to be white, but we need to, let me get this thing straightened out, but I need to make sure that it's going to work pretty good. I just moved this. So let's get a little bit of water. I need some clean water, so just bear with me. So my sandy area, Naples yellow. Let's see if I can do this here. Get some Naples yellow in here. That's not quite where I want to be, but that's the kind of thing. Here's my Naples yellow. Alright, so we're coming in here with Naples yellow. And a little bit of my Opera rose. And then we're going to keep it nice and light, watery. A lot of water. And add it in here, very watery. We're going over just pretty much most of this stuff that's not white. Then I'm going to go over it again. All right. You see what's going to happen in here. I'm going to wet this all. Some of this is going to be white sand. And I think pretty much it's real light. Let it soak in a bit more. Tends to be a little bit too yellow, but we're going to just just put a soft coating in here, and I'm wiping this sort of so that I have some valleys, some hills, some things that are happening over here. This area right here, for instance, or a little bit more. Let's take a little bit more of my Opera rose mixed in here, and we'll give this a little bit more of a shadowed effect in here, and probably something that's coming down this way as well. I'm going to do something like this. Now, what I'm going to actually do is come in here with a little bit of my blue and Opera rose, and I'm going to make this on the purple side, but again, very watery and very light. We'll give it a little bit of a characteristic shading there, and a bit of shading in this area here. Okay. And we're going to end up doing some shading in here, and I'm going to put some grass in there. Okay. Now we have to let it go. We have to let it just dry so that we can now get back in there and start to paint some detail. So because that's soaking wet, we have to let it dry. So what I'm probably going to do here is, to help this along, I would normally wait, but I think what I'm going to do is just take my dryer and dry this out a little bit more. Before I do that, maybe I can get away with some tissue work and just dry it out this way here. Get some light areas of this. Okie doke. I noticed, you know, one of the nice things about having sand dunes in a sandy area, and that there's all kinds of little hills and valleys that are lights and darks and so forth. So we can get some subtle changes in here, and that will work real well. Notice how these became clouds back here? That's kind of cool. And this is all drying out. It's got a nice feel for my shack. I'll darken some of these areas up here that are all lighter in here. I'm going to darken that a little bit more too. There's a lot of sort of areas that I got to really punch up a little bit more, punch out a little bit more. But I don't want to do it while this is wet. I want to do that on a little bit drier tone, drier feel. In the meantime, I think this is, yep, that's dry enough, and this should be dry enough. I can start to put my trees in, but I'm going to have to be careful because I don't want to put my hands in this wet area. So you guys are going to understand I'm going to take and use a maul stick to put my hand on top of, because I have to keep my hand off of this area here. So let's mix up. Let's go to a smaller brush, and I'm going to start to work in my tree trunks, scrub pine, I guess, and we're going to make those dark. So I'm going to mix cobalt blue. All right, so here's the thing. See what I'm doing now? I'm taking my French ultramarine blue and my cobalt blue and mixing them together to get a nice dark gray. See this? That's a gray brown. And the more blue I use, the more cooler it's going to be. The more red, the more burnt sienna I use, the more warmer it's going to be. All right? And right now, that's the consistency of probably cream. I want it a little bit heavier. So I'm going to take the water out of the brush, pick up my tonal value, the pigment, in other words. I'm going to pick up my pigment and put it on the brush, and I've got this round brush that I'm going to be working with. Okay, and we're going to end up starting to put in some of all of these sort of scrub pine. And I'm going to change this up. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow ochre into this as well. And we're going to just start to come in and just put that trunk in there, put this trunk in there. One in here. We're going to get these, some of these are going to end up fuzzy. We'll get all kinds of stuff going on in here. We actually have one. We have one pretty much coming out of here. You know, it's a little bit on the wet side, so we're just going to have to, don't want to do it so wet with such a bigger brush, so I'm going to go to a little smaller brush here. And again, burnt sienna, cobalt blue, more pigment, More pigment than water. Um, all right, so we got some trunks there. Got one over here. All right. Okay, so that base is in. Thin brush. We want to put in a lot of the small areas that are going to be my twigs and so forth and so on. So let's change it up a little bit. Now we got to let that wet. See, that's still too wet. We got to let that dry out a little bit. So all of this stuff is going to end up becoming a problem if I don't let it dry out. Okay, so what's next before we get into all of that? Okay, so we can go back in here. Let's go inside. Let's do the inside of my windows. And the inside of the building. I'm doing this with a small brush because it was in my hand. Normally I just sort of pick up a 1/2-inch brush and just go ahead and do that. 1/4-inch brush. All right. All right, that's the inside of my building. We'll put the shadows in. Still on the wet side. A little bit too wet. Gotta let it dampen out. Well, if it's too wet, I'm adding too much wetness to the damp areas, what's happening. What I'm doing is I'm just sort of putting in some of that background. It's a little darker down here. All right. My scrub pine. scrub pine. Kill some of that. Let's get this in. Here is my cable reel. Okay. Cable reel, and then we have what? Looks like we have a box that's over here, or some sort of a, yeah, I guess some sort of a box that's sitting right here. Let that dry a little bit more, Tony. Let that dry a little bit more. All right. Let it all dry. Let's get some dark clumps in these areas here. We'll get some dark clumps in this area here. And some little heavier dark clumps over here. And maybe we'll even make some of this darker. Darker, darker, darker. We don't know what half this stuff is over here. They're shapes. You don't know what they are. They're just shapes. Let's do a rusty rusty looking. What the hell is that? I don't know what it is. So I guess it's just a can. Do something like that first of all. Hmm. A little bit too wet. So we're just putting some tone in. Was I adding away? Sorry if it was. Didn't want that to be the case. Yeah, it's still a little bit too wet here. This is okay, you know, because we're dealing with an area where that's just going to be soft and wet, and that's not too much of a problem. And we can come in here and actually I wanted that watery. Don't want that. Maybe make that even a little bit darker. A little darker. Some of this is going to be a little bit darker in here. Like a red ball there, I guess. Just okay. What I'm gonna do is, because this is all wet, bottom's wet, top's wet. I'm gonna. Pretty sure it is. Is this dry enough? I didn't mean to do this. I suppose we can get a little bit of this in here. Okay, so change up the color a bit. So what I'm doing is I'm dragging, whoops, too much, too watery. Too watery. Okay, we're going to come in here and we're going to end up okay. dark that, maybe a little bit of alizarin yellow ochre. And we're going to do some cerulean blue. Okay. All right. Cerulean blue, I love it. Nice color. I love cerulean blue. Just add a few little touches up there. When that dries, we're going to end up making a little more scrapes in there. We're going to do a few more marks. I wonder if this is good. Let's add some interest. Where's my gray? That's what I want. All right. Again, letting it dry a bit more. This, see how this keeps dissipating? This stuff over here. I keep throwing darks in there, but keep washing out. what are we doing? We're doing between, this is the areas between the slats. The area between the slats, I'm going to end up taking the top of this against the sky. I want to bring this roof line down. I think I want to darken that up a little bit more. That makes more sense to me. Okay, so how about some trees? Let's get those. Scrub pine in that area. Same thing over here. Add a little bit of blue to this. Okay. So, let's get my rigger out. Get this nice little thin brush here. And we'll start to do some real fine. We'll just start to do some real fine line stuff. And it's important to go from one color and value to another. Let's put the light over here a little bit more so I can see what I'm doing. We got a lot of things happening over here in this tree, these trees. A lot of good stuff happening. All fixed. Okay, we'll make that work. Make all of this work. Okay. Okay. Getting close, guys, getting close. It's all about drying out this paper too, by the way. See how wet this is? It's soaking underneath. This is all soaking wet. We'll just put this right back down on top of that. The back side of this is all wet. There you go. And it's not taped down at all. Obviously, you can see that. Okay, so we need some real heavy shadow in here, And we're going to end up needing some very bright colors in these lobster pots over here. So what I'm going to do is, let me get some clean water. So with the clean water, I can come in here and let me just rinse my brush out. Should have done that before I got the clean water, actually. Let me just get some, I'm going to throw some bright colors in here and there. We'll put a bright red here. Maybe we'll just do a red up there. And probably something over here. And how about a blue? Okay, we'll just do a little bit of a bright blue. And on this one here, maybe there's a bright blue down here. How about a little bit of an orangish color right here? Let's do that. Now I can't really see or distinguish actually anything really in any of this stuff. Maybe an orange ball. Don't want to make that dirty. Gotta just okay. A little something up there. These are just, all of this is just garbage. Rocks. What are this? What is this stuff? This is nothing. It's just little shapes. Yeah. All right. Alright, the old shack. Look, a little bit of a grayish, color. So we'll do my light blue here, my cobalt blue. Let me say, yeah, my cobalt blue. Right there. Do this. Boarded up window sort of, I don't know. We'll make this shadowed side here. Okay, and we'll do the inside of this. Okay. Let's get some more color. And just stuff my green. So we got a drab green. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking a little bit of this. This is just a drab green top. Shadow underneath that. A little darker shadow underneath there. Okay. A little bit of rusty color. Red rust. Let's just mix up this a little bit more here. And we'll add a little bit of a bluish shadow underneath this. Okay. A little rusted can that's there. Something like that. Some rocks. And let me get some shadow in here. Okay. This crappy stuff, just garbage. I don't know what, I mean, whatever it is. Just crappy stuff. Something that will work. Okay, let's get some more of this. Some of that coming down here. Okay. And we'll get some, let's get some darker stuff in here. I need some yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is a good fill. All right. Okay. Looking good. I don't know. How about some planks? A couple of boards. I want to do this, and I want this to be darker in here. Okay, okay. Okay, how about some lines, rope? We're gonna fix those trees. Now, see if I can get some real dark red sienna, yellow ochre, a little bit of water. fix those trees. Fix these trees. This tree here. Okay. And we're going to end up fixing some of this stuff in here. Okay, we got some docks in here. We have dock this way, dock that way. Have a dock hole in the center. Got something that's going to happen here. Now, we have, this is going to be dock at the bottom. That's going to be docked there. That's going to be docked there. Okay. Again, okay, we're going to end up making that a little bit darker. Right here. All right. That's that. And I want to make it a darker here. I want this to be darker in here and here. All right. Okay. Let's do a little bit of a bush there. Okay. Okay. Done? Close, 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 close. Let's get a little bit of that in here. I think what I'm going to do is leave it alone. I'm going to call it a painting. What I'm doing right now is just giving them just a little bit of detail. A few dark spots here and there. What I did, let's just make these shapes a little bit more interesting. Okay. The only thing I'm doing is hanging some of this stuff. We have we got some real dark stuff down here. And the only time we can put this in, I think, my gut feeling here is that the only time to put this in is now. Okay. Let me get some of this up here. A couple of those spots, little spots. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some lavender, which is always fun to do. We'll get a little bit of lavender and get this little bit, some of this stuff. Well, let's do this. Well, I'm going to end up using here. Let's just do this. Okay. Okay. There you go. Well, okay. We ended up screwing this up, didn't we? Right here. I wanted that bowl. Okay, that's good. A little bit more of that. Some of that stuff over there. Okay, that's good. Now just let's get some line or some what looks like rope. Just all it is okay. I think that's close enough so that we have a good feeling for this. We're there. The only thing I'm going to do right now, I want to take a very light pencil. See if we can do it with, I don't know if this will do it. No, that won't do it. Light yellow. There it is here. Let's try this one. I'm doing this with a pencil simply because it's just easier for me to do it. We got some. Now this is a watercolor pencil, obviously. It's going to help with the grass. Get some of this darker material. Anyway, this is about it. I think we got it close enough. Let's give that a shot. A little bit of just going to take a little bit of water. So that's my painting. Thank you for being with me. I'm your host, Tony Visco. This is Painting for Pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks. Bye-bye.